Hi, my name is Josh Moran, and welcome to the Financial Aid System of Tennessee. This video covers foster child tuition grant processing in FAST, and I'm going to start today's video by going over some of the basic program requirements. First, foster child tuition grant scholarship is awarded to students who meet the academic requirements for the HOPE scholarship, and by that we're talking about the ACT, SAT requirements. We'll also use the high school GPA if the student graduated from a high school that we can use the GPA for HOPE eligibility. And I do want to point that out, that we are looking at the high school type when determining if the student meets these requirements for foster child. Second, the student must have been considered in state's custody, and in order to satisfy those requirements, they must meet one of these conditions. They were in state's custody at any time when the individual was 13 years or older, or two, was in state's custody at any time when the individual was 13 years or older and placed for adoption by the Department of Children's Services, and the adoption was finalized, or three, was in state's custody at any time and was placed in a permanent guardianship by DCS after reaching 13 years of age. So determine if the student meet these state's custody requirements. TSAC will send a list over anyone who answered yes to being an orphan or in foster care on the FAFSA to Tennessee DCS for them to verify the state's custody requirement. Once we receive that response, we load it into FAST and display it on the foster child page, which we'll discuss later in this video. One thing worth keeping in mind, though, that DCS confirmation process is a one-time requirement and doesn't have to be repeated each subsequent year the student applies. Once we send that student off to DCS and they come back verified, they're automatically considered verified for each subsequent year. Also, in each subsequent year, the student doesn't have to continue to answer yes to the orphan or foster child question on the FAFSA. That's not a requirement for the program. We just use that to feed students into the list for DCS. The third thing about foster child is how much it pays. So each semester, foster child pays up to the cost of attendance, less any gift aid, with the total award not to exceed the cost of tuition and mandatory fees at that post-secondary institution. We'll cover how we do that later in the new FAST forms later, but this, along with the DCS confirmation value, are really the only items that set foster child apart from the other programs inside of FAST. All other processing things will be the same or will operate the same for foster child. But it is worth mentioning, like those other state aid programs, foster child also requires those basic general eligibility requirements. And that would be like U.S. citizen, eligible non-citizen. They can't be in default or overpayment on federal, state loans or grants. They have to be a Tennessee resident. So for these students, that's going to mean that they have a Tennessee mailing address, and the residency rules for foster child do operate the same as other programs and will update accordingly. Also, a residency override placed on a student will also update the status for foster child like it does for other programs. Other requirements: a student must be attending a foster child eligible institution. They have to have a calculated SAI. They have to have graduated from an eligible Tennessee high school as well. And if they don't, we'll use the same description for that ineligible reason that we use for HOPE. That would be the academic requirement not met, either because inactive high school, GED student, HiSET, or revised GED. Foster child also has a requirement that that student must be paid from foster child within the first 4 years after high school graduation. If they don't receive it within that 4-year period, they also lose eligibility for the program. And aside from that reason, once a student is initially eligible, they can also lose eligibility for the program if they fail to maintain the institution's academic progress policy, or if they graduate with a bachelor's degree. And students, once they're paid, will lose eligibility for foster child after 6 years from that initial payment point on there. Okay, so that's the basic tenets of the program. Next, let's go over the application for foster child. And so the sole application for foster child is the FAFSA. We identify students for consideration for foster child for those who have answered yes to the orphan or foster care question on the FAFSA, but otherwise a student doesn't need to fill out any other application. For the quick view here in FAST, so you'll see a new foster child entry, and so you'll see that entry on any student who meets one of these two conditions. One, they answered yes to being an orphan or to being in foster care on the FAFSA, or two, they were sent for DCS verification in a prior year. So even if that student leaves off an answer or answering yes to being an orphan on the FAFSA or being in foster care in a subsequent year, you'll still see that foster child entry for them going forward. So next, let's talk about the foster child tuition scholarship page and the foster child status next. So foster child is the first program that hits production with the new page layout. DEG will also use this layout. There's no major change in how these pages work, though. We just had to replace the old eGrants page because it was written in such an older language. But we did try to keep as much stuff operating in the same way or in the same layout. You'll have the basic status information and student information at the top of the screen. Application information or information specific to calculating that status in the center of the page. Then you'll also see payment information at the bottom. The payment information, though, has one slight change. Instead of vertical columns for the fall, spring, summer, you now see horizontal columns for the fall, spring, summer. And that's how these new pages will operate. At the top of the page, you'll see an edit button used to update information on the scholarship. Most of you won't have the ability to edit all these fields on a student. Next, the DCS confirmation history button. And let's talk about that confirmation process for a little bit. So this is something that TSAC does with DCS. It's not something done by a college counselor, but it can be useful to understand where that student is in the confirmation process. So if you click on this button, you're going to bring up just a pop-up, just informational. And what it is each step in the confirmation process for that student. So if you see a status of pending verification, that means we've sent that student off to Tennessee DCS. We're waiting a response. And that should be followed up with an entry right after that's going to say, hey, yes, the student meets the state's custody requirement, or no, they do not. But just being able to understand or see where they're at in this confirmation process could be useful if you're trying to nail down when you award this student, or do you need to may help you understand where they are at inside the process for receiving foster child. Also, with at the top of the screen, you'll see a button for financial needs statement, which we'll follow up with a little bit later in this video. You'll also have a button at the top of this page for update the payment status. So this is going to work the same as it did just with the older eGrants page. At any point that you've certified a student for non-payment, that would be not enrolled, unsatisfactory, graduated, no unmet need, for example, you can come to this button, select a term, reset it, and that's going to set that student back to ready to certify. You now can go through and certify them again for that term. You can do that for any non-payment status as long as they're not reflected paid. For that semester, you can reset that status. So let's talk about the application status now next. Foster child has three distinct statuses that you may see. So a student with a pending verification status, we're waiting on a response from DCS to see if that student meets the state's custody requirement. But that student with that pending verification status has otherwise met all other academic requirements, application requirements for foster child. We're just waiting on that DCS response. A student with an eligible status, similar to this one here, has been confirmed as meeting the state's custody requirement as well as all other application requirements, and they haven't been certified with a permanent loss reason, and they haven't met the maximum assistance reasons for the program either. A student with an ineligible status has either been confirmed as not meeting the state's custody requirement, they may have an issue with one or more application requirements, or they've been certified with a permanent loss reason, or they've received foster child up to program limits, i.e. that maximum assistance reason. In the student information section of the page, you're going to see basic student name, contact information. In that application information section, you're going to see data elements from both the student's FAFSA and their student scores page, anything that would be relevant to calculating that status for the student. And just to note that these high school fields, graduation year, GPA, ACT, and SAT fields are the same ones that you would see on for HOPE on the student scores page. So if you need to update something in this section, you don't do it from this page. You go to HOPE, you change the high school information that you would use for HOPE. Okay, so I'm going to jump back over to the financial needs statement. So earlier in the video, we said that foster child tuition grant pays the lesser of the cost of attendance less than a gift aid, or the cost of attendance and mandatory fees at an eligible institution. And so to determine what can be paid for a particular student for a particular term, you, the college, must come into this form and complete it before a student can be certified for funds greater than zero. And let me stop here and emphasize that. You can certify non-payment indicators without completing this form. So if you had a student who was never admitted, never enrolled, you don't have to fill out this form for that student. But if you're going to request any funds from foster child for a particular student, you're going to need to complete this form. The financial needs statement can be accessed, as we saw from the financial needs statement button on the foster child page. When you get here, there's some fields that you need to fill out. This all would have been information you would have filled out on the old Excel or paper form for foster child. It's just telling us how much their unmet need are and what their tuition is for that particular term, so we can determine what that student's maximum should be this semester. So you're going to be required to fill out the number of hours for that particular semester. And it's important to use the actual amount and not any estimated, because we're going to use that number of hours to determine what you can pay that student for that semester. Next, we're going to need you to fill out the components for the cost of attendance for that student. And this also, like the hours, you'll use the actual cost of attendance components and not an estimated amount. We're trying to determine how much we can pay this student for a particular term, and it's going to be based upon actual enrollment, not any type of estimated or any type of cost estimate. Next, you're going to fill in this section for gift and scholarship aid. And like the other ones, you're going to use the actual amount that the student received, not the full-time or estimated amount. All of this will be used to calculate what that student's cost of attendance, what their gift aid is, so we can get down and calculate what their unmet need is for this semester. And again, just to repeat this, all the values that you're going to enter on this form will be particular to the fall. So fall components for the COA, fall components for gift and scholarship aid. When you need to do it for the other semesters, you'll go to the tabs at the top and enter in information specific to that term. And when you get down to this amount, what we're going to do on the certification roster, it's going to be the maximum that this student can be paid would be the lesser of $5,400 or whatever this school's tuition is for 12 credit hours. So that's how we're going to determine the maximum amount that you can pay each semester for foster child. At the bottom of this form, we do display history on here for who last updated this page. This would be the username, this would be the institution, and this would be the date and time that it was last updated. And this was just something we added in there. It's being saved in the background, but we thought it may be useful if you could tell when this page was last updated by a student and who updated that form. So let's talk payment certification for foster child. Like the other rosters, you'll go to Rosters, Certification. You'll select foster child from the drop-down along with the year. You won't have to select the school, but I do in here. And then you'll just select the semester. When you get down to the certification page for foster child, just know that it's going to work like all the other roster pages do in FAST as far as going to different page numbers, searching, and sorting by last name. So all of those things work the same for foster child. When you get down to certification, there are just 4 fields that you're going to have to review before you can submit information for this particular student. The first field that you've got to enter in will be the certification indicator dropdown. Here you'll see options for appeals pending. This would be when an appeal is being considered at your institution that may impact their eligibility for the program. Certified. This is whenever you're just requesting payment greater than 0. Graduated, students completed a bachelor's degree. Ineligible would be for any student that you need to certify for a reason that we haven't covered by the other indicators. Maximum assistance received. So this would be a student, FAST will calculate a maximum assistance reason, but since we're in a transition year going into the 25-26 year, there are foster child recipients from prior years that will join in with that group. So if they've met the maximum assistance for foster child, you can certify them with that reason. No unmet need. You'll use that if the student no longer has any financial need to receive this award, and not enrolled, and then unsatisfactory progress, which you'll use whenever a student has failed your institution's SAP policy. Now, one thing to keep in mind, earlier we said that you can't certify a student for an amount greater than zero until their financial aid statement has been completed that semester. And the way that we control that is by hiding the certified indicator if the financial need statement hasn't been completed for that term. So this student, I have done that financial need statement for the spring term, so I see the certified indicator. This other student, though, I haven't done that. So I don't see that certified indicator. It will not show up until their spring financial needs statement has been completed. So just keep that in mind as you're certifying. If you're missing that certified indicator, it's likely because the needs statement needs to be completed for that term. Hours. So this field over here is fed over from the needs statement. It's not something that you'll need to update, but we're just displaying it on the screen one last time so you can double check it before you submit it. If it's a different value than what you're expecting, for example, that may lead you to go through and update that needs statement before you certify them. GPA. This is just the student's institutional GPA on a 4.0 scale, and then the term amount over here. And you can certify any amount up to student's unmet need or tuition and fees, whatever is the lesser amount. You'll save, submit this information. It's going to work the same as it does for other programs. Okay, so the student has been certified, TSEC has processed your payment, and let's say in the normal course of business you find a student who needs an adjustment to the foster child payment. So you're going to access that page the same way that you would for any other program. You're going to navigate over to that particular student's payment history, and you're going to select the amount associated with the term that you want to adjust the payment. So Foster Child uses a new template for the adjustments page. That's why you see a slightly different look to it. But the layout was modeled right after the existing programs. You have two fields that you need to adjust during the foster child payment adjustment. The first one is the number of hours. If it was the same, you can submit the same value at certification. You then go into the second field, enter the new payment amount. So in here, I'm going to say $4,000 total, and you can see that it's going to calculate the adjustment amount as -400. So one new thing for the payment adjustment process that we have a new comment box associated with this adjustment. So it is a required field on here. So if I need to make an adjustment, I can say tuition refund on foster child tuition grant for, let's say fall, 25, 26. And it doesn't have to be anything massive on there, just any note that goes through and explains why that adjustment was necessary. And that works for both refunding money or requesting additional funds. But one thing that I will note that on the adjustments, we still won't let you request the amount of funds more than what was justified on the financial needs statement. So if you make a payment adjustment and you're requesting more funds, just keep in mind that you may be required to go through and update that student's financial needs statement for that semester. That would be maybe they picked up another course and you've got to add some to the tuition and fees component of the COA, or maybe they're awarded less scholarship aid than you were expecting. Any of those types of things. If you're running into an issue, the adjustments is not letting you pay as much as you think you should be, it's likely a financial needs statement update, or it's likely that a financial needs statement update is needed. Okay, so that's foster child very quickly on there. We will do a quick review just to summarize that process. It may look different at your school, but this is one way that it can operate. So at the college, I'm going to use the certification roster report, either version, to identify my potentially eligible students. Only the students who've been confirmed by DCS would appear on that list. I go through, make potential awards inside my system. Then after census date, I go through, identify all the awards that I'm going to pay. I go through FAST for those students. I enter data from their actual enrollment, update their needs statement for that term. I then go through and certify payment for that semester, requesting funds for those students that I updated the needs statement for. I certify a non-payment reason for all other students. I'm then going to go through, run a reconciliation report some point later in the semester, check my paid amounts. If I need to make any payment adjustments, I can make that using the foster child tuition grant adjustment screen. And that's it. That's foster child. All the information in this video is also covered in a user guide update. Look to the menu to find where it's at in there, but it should be released. I don't believe there's any additional material in the video that's not covered in the user guide, and vice versa is true as well. But otherwise, thank you. Let us know if you have any questions, and have a good day.